Welcome to World Information HD, your go-to channel for mind-blowing facts, collectibles, and rare treasures from around the globe. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of numismatics with a jaw-dropping countdown: Top 10 Most Valuable Rare U.S. Lincoln Wheat Pennies Worth Millions. From wartime minting errors to ultra-scarce varieties, get ready to discover which pennies could turn up in your change and shock you with their real value. The world of coin collecting is filled with mysteries, surprises, and treasures that sometimes appear in the most unexpected places. Imagine this: you're going through an old jar of pennies that has been sitting in your grandparents' attic for decades, and among the brown, dull coins lies one that looks just a little different. Maybe it has a small detail that stands out, maybe it carries a date you've only seen in history books, or maybe it simply feels heavier in your hand. What you may not realize is that some of these ordinary-looking coins, minted many years ago, can hold value beyond imagination. Today, we are diving deep into the story of the United States of America 1940s mint mark Lincoln 1-cent wheat penny, a coin that on the surface looks like just another small copper cent, but in reality, it carries history, rarity, and an extraordinary potential value. The Lincoln wheat penny itself has a rich background. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the centennial birth year of President Abraham Lincoln. Before that, pennies carried different designs, often symbols of liberty or simple motifs of agriculture. But in 1909, the United States Mint made history by putting an actual portrait of a president on a circulating coin for the first time. Victor David Brenner, the artist behind the design, gave us the iconic image of Lincoln facing right, a profile that continues to this day on modern pennies. On the reverse side of the wheat pennies, two simple stalks of wheat stood proudly, representing prosperity, growth, and the agricultural heart of America. This design would continue until 1958, when it was replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse in 1959. By the time we reached the year 1940, the world was on the brink of turmoil. World War II was already underway in Europe, and though the United States had not yet officially joined, the nation was preparing, adjusting its industries, and keeping a close eye on global events. At this moment in history, the San Francisco Mint was hard at work producing coins to support the growing needs of the economy. That year, the Mint produced millions of pennies, marked with the tiny but significant S Mint mark just below the date on the obverse side of the coin. To many people in 1940, these pennies were just small pieces of copper meant to buy chewing gum, newspapers, or a cup of coffee. But decades later, collectors would begin to see them as artifacts of history, carrying stories not just of money, but of America itself. What makes the 1940s Lincoln wheat penny fascinating is the combination of its age, its condition when found, and the small variations that sometimes occur during minting. Coins from the San Francisco Mint were known for strong strikes, but sometimes differences appeared, slight misalignments, doubling of letters, or other errors. Such details, which most people ignored at the time, can make an enormous difference today when collectors appraise them. Even a subtle detail, like how sharply Lincoln's hairlines were struck, or whether the wheat stalks on the reverse are crisp and detailed, can change a coin's value dramatically. Now, think about the journey of one of these pennies. Minted in San Francisco in 1940, it may have passed through countless hands: workers in shipyards, farmers buying seed, soldiers' families stretching every cent during hard times. Some of these coins were saved by accident, tucked away in piggy banks, drawers, or coin collections that were forgotten for generations. Over time, while most of them wore down from years of circulation, a handful remained in pristine condition, untouched, their copper shine preserved as though frozen in time. These are the coins that collectors dream of finding. Condition, or grade, is one of the most important aspects when evaluating any coin. The grading scale ranges from poor, barely recognizable, all the way up to mint state, where the coin shows no signs of wear. For the 1940s Lincoln wheat penny, finding one in high mint state is extremely rare. Most were heavily circulated, losing their sharpness and shine. But those few that survived in exceptional condition, stored away carefully, have become treasures worth astonishing amounts. The value rises even higher if the coin has what collectors call red color, meaning the original bright copper luster is still visible rather than turning brown with oxidation. Beyond condition, collectors also search for errors and varieties. Imagine a coin struck with a slightly doubled image on the date, or a penny where the mint mark was hand-punched slightly off. In the early 20th century, mint marks were applied by hand onto the working dies, so small differences occurred. A repunched mint mark or a doubled die could make a 1940 S penny vastly more valuable than its ordinary counterparts. These unique variations tell a story of human error in an industrial process, turning what might be a common coin into something one-of-a-kind. Let's also step back and consider the wider historical backdrop of this coin. In 1940, Franklin D. Roosevelt was president. America was still pulling itself out of the Great Depression, and pennies mattered more than they do today. With 1 cent, a child could buy a piece of candy, a mother could stretch her food budget, or a man could pay part of his bus fare. The penny was not just a coin, it was a symbol of thrift, hard work, and the small savings that kept families afloat. When we hold the 1940 S penny today, we are not just holding metal, we are touching a piece of that history. Every scratch, every smooth surface worn by time, tells the story of its journey through lives long past. Over the decades, the Lincoln Wheat Penny became one of the most beloved coins for collectors. Children in the 1950s and 1960s often began their numismatic journey by filling penny folders, hunting for every year and every mint mark. The 1940s was always a fascinating slot to fill. While not the rarest, it was a challenge to find in higher grades, and for many collectors, it represented the thrill of the hunt. Today, seasoned collectors, investors, and even treasure hunters still seek it out, knowing that the right coin, in the right condition, can be worth more than anyone would expect from something so small. The allure of coin collecting lies not just in monetary value but also in the stories coins carry. Every coin is like a time machine, taking us back to the era when it was minted. The 1940s Lincoln Wheat Penny takes us back to the edge of the Second World War, a time when the nation was preparing for challenges ahead, when copper and other metals would soon become essential to the war effort. Just 2 years later, in 1942, the United States would enter the war, and by 1943, pennies would be made of steel instead of copper to save resources. The 1940s penny, therefore, is not just a coin, it is one of the last representatives of an era before the dramatic changes of wartime coinage. For the modern collector, discovering the true value of a 1940 South penny means paying close attention to its grade and uniqueness. A worn example might only be worth a few cents or $1, while a coin in uncirculated condition, with its original red luster, could command thousands. Add an error, a doubled die, or a rare repunched mint mark, and the value skyrockets even further. Auctions have shown us time and again that collectors are willing to pay astonishing sums for the right coin, especially when it combines beauty, rarity, and history. Think about the possibility of finding such a coin in your own collection, tucked away unnoticed for years. Many people don't realize the hidden potential sitting in old jars, inherited collections, or forgotten boxes. What seems like an ordinary penny may in fact be one of the most valuable coins of its type. For those who search, the thrill is not only in the financial reward but in uncovering a piece of American history that has survived through generations. The 1940s Lincoln Wheat Penny continues to inspire curiosity because it embodies the unexpected. It teaches us that even the smallest things, often overlooked, can hold immense worth. A coin that once bought a newspaper could today change someone's life if discovered in pristine condition. That's the magic of numismatics, the blending of history, art, chance, and value into one small piece of metal. Collectors, historians, and treasure hunters all agree, the journey of the Lincoln penny is one of America's greatest coin stories. From its origins in 1909, through the difficult years of the Great Depression and into the turbulent times of the 1940s, it has stood as a silent witness to history. In the world of coin collecting, few things capture the imagination like the humble Lincoln Wheat Penny. It is a coin that many Americans grew up with, a coin that often showed up in pocket change, on kitchen tables, and inside old jars tucked away in cupboards. Yet, Among the millions and millions of these pennies that were minted, certain years and mint marks stand out as treasures waiting to be discovered. Today, we are going to explore one such treasure, the 1941 D mint mark Lincoln wheat cent. This little piece of copper, barely larger than a fingertip, carries with it a fascinating story of American history, minting tradition, and collector's passion. The year 1941 was a significant time in the United States. The nation was on the brink of entering World War II, and the world was undergoing monumental changes. In Denver, Colorado, the U.S. Mint was busy producing coins that would be used by millions of Americans in their daily lives. Among those coins was the Lincoln cent, first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. This design, featuring Lincoln's profile on the obverse and wheat stalks on the reverse, quickly became an American icon. By 1941, the design had been in use for over 3 decades, yet it still carried the same patriotic resonance as the day it was first struck. The Denver Mint in 1941 produced an astonishing number of these pennies. Over 128 million were struck that year with the D mint mark. To the average person, these were just pennies, simple coins to buy candy, newspapers, or household items. But to collectors today, the condition, the rarity of specific varieties, and the history behind them make these coins much more than mere pocket change. When we think of wheat pennies, it's easy to imagine them as common coins. After all, millions of them were made between 1909 and 1958. But the beauty of coin collecting lies in the details. Not every coin survives the test of time in the same way. Some remain crisp and sharp, while others get worn down through decades of circulation. And in the case of the 1941 D wheat penny, finding one in pristine, uncirculated condition is like discovering a tiny piece of American history frozen in time. Collectors often talk about grading when it comes to coins, and grading is especially important for Lincoln cents. A penny that has been heavily used might only be worth a few cents, even if it's old. But when a coin remains in mint state, meaning it has never been circulated and still carries its original shine, the value can climb dramatically. For the 1941 D penny, the difference between a worn example and a mint state gem is enormous. What makes the 1941 D penny so interesting is not only the year in which it was struck but also the little quirks and varieties that collectors have found over the decades. Some coins were struck with slight doubling on the lettering or date, a minting error that fascinates numismatists. Others show off unusual die breaks or minor imperfections that make them unique. Every tiny detail on these coins can turn an ordinary cent into something that collectors chase after with enthusiasm. It's also important to remember that these pennies were minted during a time of great change in the world. In 1941, America was not yet fully involved in the war, but tensions were high, and resources were shifting. Just a year later, in 1942, the mint would begin experimenting with different metals for coinage due to wartime shortages, eventually leading to the famous steel pennies of 1943. That means the 1941 D penny was one of the last to be made from the traditional bronze alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc before the war began to change everything. The design of the Lincoln wheat penny also deserves attention. On the obverse, we see Victor David Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design that has stood the test of time and is still in use on pennies today. On the reverse, the 2 wheat stalks, flanking the words 1 cent and United States of America, remind us of the agrarian roots of the nation. Above, the Latin motto, E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many one, speaks to the unity of the country. Every detail, from Lincoln's thoughtful profile to the simple yet powerful wheat design, contributes to why these coins remain beloved more than a century after their creation. For collectors, the thrill of discovering a rare or valuable coin often comes from unexpected places. Many people have found wheat pennies like the 1941 D in old coffee cans, in inherited coin jars, or even as pocket change that somehow remained in circulation for decades. Imagine the surprise of spotting that small D mint mark below the date on a coin that has survived for over 80 years. The thought that such a tiny object could carry not only monetary value but also a deep connection to the past makes it extraordinary. Grading services today, such as PCGS and NGC, play an essential role in determining the value of coins like the 1941 Wheat Penny. A coin that has been professionally graded and encapsulated in a protective holder is far more desirable to collectors than one that has not. These services use a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 representing a perfect, flawless coin. For wheat pennies, anything graded above MS65 is considered exceptional, and examples in this range can fetch significant prices at auctions. But beyond the numbers and grading, there's something about the Lincoln Wheat Penny that resonates on a personal level. It's a coin that feels familiar, even to those who are not collectors. Perhaps it's the image of Lincoln, a president admired for his leadership and wisdom. Perhaps it's the wheat design, evoking memories of a simpler, agricultural America. Or perhaps it's simply the nostalgia of holding a coin that our grandparents, or great-grandparents, once used in their everyday lives. The 1941 penny embodies all of these qualities. It's a bridge between the everyday and the extraordinary, between the past and the present. Collectors who seek it out are not just hunting for a coin, they're seeking a story, a tangible link to history that they can hold in the palm of their hands. As with all coins, rarity and condition determine value. And while the 1941 penny is not the rarest of wheat cents, it becomes incredibly valuable in the highest grades. Finding one that has survived untouched for 8 decades, with its luster intact and no signs of wear, is what makes it a prize. Such coins are snapped up quickly at auctions, often sparking bidding wars among collectors who know just how special they are. The story of the 1941 penny is also a reminder of the importance of paying attention to the small things. How many of these coins passed through countless hands without anyone noticing their potential worth? How many were tossed into fountains, slipped between couch cushions, or lost in the dirt, never to be seen again? The survival of any coin in top condition is a minor miracle, and that is part of what makes numismatics so captivating. Even today, the 1941 penny holds lessons for us. It shows that value can be found in the most ordinary places, that history often hides in plain sight, and that something as simple as a penny can carry a legacy far greater than its face value. It challenges us to look closely, to appreciate the details, and to understand that every coin has a journey, a past, and a story worth telling. For collectors, owning a 1941 Wheat Penny in mint condition is like owning a tiny piece of America's story. It's not just about the copper and the design, it's about the era it represents, the craftsmanship of the mint, and the enduring appeal of Lincoln's image. And when one of these coins reaches the highest grades possible, its value transcends the ordinary, turning a simple 1-cent piece into a treasure worth pursuing. As we conclude our journey into the history and significance of the 1941 Lincoln Wheat Penny, remember that what might appear small or ordinary can often be extraordinary. The world of coin collecting is filled with such surprises, where history, artistry, and rarity come together to create something truly special. And for the 1941 penny, the ultimate reward for collectors and enthusiasts is not just in its story, but in its remarkable value. Because a 1941 mint mark Lincoln wheat cent in the finest condition has been known to sell for an astounding $62,477. The world of coin collecting has always been fascinating. Each coin, no matter how small, carries a story. These tiny pieces of metal pass through countless hands, witness history unfold, and silently record the times they were struck in. Among America's most beloved coins is the Lincoln 1-cent Wheat Penny, a coin that has captured the attention of collectors for generations. Today, we are going to dive deep into one very specific year and variety that continues to intrigue collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike. That is the 1941 no-mint mark Lincoln Wheat Penny. Now you might be wondering, why 1941? What makes this particular penny so special? After all, the Lincoln cent had already been in production since 1909. The answer lies in a combination of history, design, condition, rarity, and collector demand. When these factors collide, an ordinary coin suddenly becomes extraordinary. Let us take a journey back in time to the year 1941. The United States was still recovering from the Great Depression and was on the brink of entering World War II. The world was tense, economies were fragile, and every resource counted. Pennies minted in this year carry that historic atmosphere, a reminder of a nation preparing for global conflict. While the war would later change coinage methods dramatically in 1943 with the famous steel cent, the 1941 penny still retained its traditional composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. The design of the Lincoln Wheat Penny is another part of its enduring appeal. On the obverse, we have the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln designed by Victor David Brenner. This portrait has stood the test of time, making it the longest-running coin design in American history. Above Lincoln's head sits the motto, "In God We Trust." To his left is the word, "Liberty," and to the right is the year of mintage, in this case 1941. If you look closely, the absence of a mint mark beneath the date means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not use a mint mark during this era. This lack of a mint mark is what collectors refer to when they say, "No mint mark." On the reverse, we see the simple yet beautiful wheat design. Two wheat stalks frame the sides, symbolizing America's agricultural strength. In the center appear the words 1 cent and United States of America, with the Latin phrase E pluribus unum above, which translates to out of many one. This classic reverse design was used from 1909 until 1958, giving the coin its nickname, the Wheat Penny. But let's get to what makes the 1941 no-mint mark Lincoln penny so interesting to collectors today. The Philadelphia Mint produced a massive number of pennies that year, over 887 million in total. That's nearly a billion coins, which means at first glance, the 1941 penny doesn't seem rare at all. Many of them circulated heavily, being used for everyday purchases, and over time they became worn down. But here's the twist. Condition is everything in coin collecting. While common circulated examples might only fetch a few cents or maybe $1, uncirculated and especially high-grade examples can command staggering prices at auctions. Collectors are particularly keen on coins that survive in pristine condition despite the odds. Remember, these pennies were struck during a time when they were heavily used in daily commerce. Saving a penny might not have been a priority for most people when bread, milk, and basic survival mattered more. This means that examples preserved in uncirculated or mint state condition are scarce. Grading plays a major role in determining value. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 representing a perfect coin that shows no marks under magnification. A 1941 penny in good condition might only be worth a few cents, while one graded mint state red with minimal imperfections can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Another factor that drives value is the color designation of the coin. Lincoln Wheat pennies are often classified into three categories: brown, red-brown, and red. Over time, copper coins naturally darken and tone due to oxidation. A coin that retains its original red luster from the mint is much scarcer and more desirable to collectors. So when you combine a high grade with a bright red color designation, you get a coin that collectors are willing to pay top dollar for. Now you may ask, have there been record sales for the 1941 no-mint mark Lincoln penny? The answer is yes. Auction houses and private sales have seen incredible results when coins of this year and type are offered in near-perfect condition. What makes these coins so desirable is not just their age, but also the rarity of finding such a coin preserved so flawlessly for over 8 decades. It's like discovering a time capsule from 1941. A copper relic that escaped the wear and tear of circulation. Let's also not forget the historical backdrop. Coins from this period represent a fascinating chapter in American history. By 1941, the country was still technically neutral in World War II, but the attack on Pearl Harbor later that year would draw the United States directly into the global conflict. Every penny minted during this time carries with it the weight of a nation on the edge of war. Collectors often find historical context adds to the allure and emotional value of a coin. Eras and varieties also play a role in boosting collector interest. While the 1941 no-mint mark penny does not have as many famous varieties as other years, there are still examples of doubled dies, repunched dates, and striking errors that can make certain coins worth significantly more. These errors occur when something goes wrong during the minting process, and they are often sought after by collectors who appreciate their uniqueness. Think about it. Out of nearly 1 billion coins produced, only a handful might contain striking errors or survive in perfect condition. That tiny percentage instantly elevates their desirability and price. As a coin enthusiast, holding a 1941 penny is more than just holding a piece of change. It's holding a piece of history, a reminder of a turbulent world, a tribute to Abraham Lincoln, and a symbol of America's resilience. It also connects you to generations of collectors who have cherished and studied these coins for decades. Now, let's imagine you discover a 1941 penny in your change jar or tucked away in an old family collection. What should you do? The first step is to examine its condition carefully. Does it still have its red luster? Does it show only minor signs of wear? Is the strike sharp and clear? If the answer is yes, then you may have a valuable coin on your hands. The next step is to have it professionally graded by a reputable grading service such as PCGS or NGC. A certified grade can make a huge difference in the value and sale price of the coin. The beauty of coin collecting lies in the fact that treasure can be hiding anywhere. A simple penny, overlooked for decades, can suddenly reveal itself as a highly prized collectible. That is the magic of numismatics. Collectors worldwide continue to chase the finest examples of this 1941 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. They scour coin shows, auctions, estate sales, and even pocket change in hopes of finding that elusive gem. For some, the thrill of the hunt is just as rewarding as the coin itself. When all is said and done, the story of the 1941 Lincoln Wheat Penny is one of transformation. What was once an ordinary coin of commerce has, over time, become an object of desire, a treasure worth preserving, and in the rarest cases, a fortune in copper. And now comes the part you've been waiting for. While most 1941 pennies may only be worth a modest amount, the finest examples, those rare, immaculate, uncirculated specimens that still shine bright red as if they were struck yesterday, have sold at auction for an astonishing $57,837. Welcome to World Information HD, where we explore the most fascinating stories behind rare coins that could be sitting in your change jar, your attic, or maybe hidden in an old box of keepsakes. Today, we're going to dive into the history, the mystery, and the surprising value of one remarkable coin, the 1942 no-mint mark Lincoln Wheat Penny. Now, most people look at a penny and think it's just 1 cent. But if you've ever heard of rare wheat pennies, you know that these small coins can tell big stories about American history. And in the case of the 1942 wheat penny, this little copper coin is more than just currency. It's a link to the struggles of World War II, the changes in the U.S. Mint, and the unexpected quirks that make collectors around the world hunt for them. To understand why the 1942 wheat penny is special, we need to go back to the early 20th century. In 1909, the United States Mint introduced the Lincoln cent, designed by Victor David Brenner, to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person instead of a symbolic figure like Liberty. On the obverse, or front, was Lincoln's portrait, and on the reverse were 2 wheat stalks framing the words, 1 cent. These wheat ears gave the coin its nickname, the Wheat Penny. By the time 1942 came around, the United States had entered World War II. Every part of American life was affected, from rationing of food and gasoline to the use of metals for the war effort. Copper, which was used to make pennies, was needed desperately for ammunition and equipment. This looming shortage would play a huge role in how the Lincoln cent evolved during the war years. In 1942, however, the Mint was still producing the classic bronze wheat penny, an alloy made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. But even then, the government was planning changes. They were testing alternative materials, experimenting with everything from glass to plastics, in order to conserve copper. So, the 1942 penny stands at an interesting crossroads. It was one of the last years that copper was used fully before the dramatic shift to steel pennies in 1943. The no-mint mark part of the 1942 penny is also important. You see, coins struck at the Philadelphia Mint, the nation's first mint, traditionally carry no mint mark at all. If you have a 1942 penny without a mint mark, it was made in Philadelphia. While the Denver and San Francisco mints used D and S marks to identify their coins, Philadelphia's coins remained unmarked. That makes these plain coins easy to identify, but it doesn't mean they're ordinary. In fact, Philadelphia struck hundreds of millions of pennies in 1942, but within that massive number are variations, errors, and high-grade examples that turn an everyday cent into a collector's dream. One of the most fascinating things about the 1942 penny is the world it represents. Imagine it, a young soldier getting paid in pennies before shipping off to Europe. A child buying candy at the corner store during wartime America. A factory worker tossing change into a jar after a long shift producing supplies for the war. These pennies passed through countless hands, each one carrying the touch of history. That human connection makes them so much more than metal discs. Now let's talk about why collectors care so much about these coins. The key is condition. A 1942 penny that's heavily worn, dark, and scratched from decades of circulation may only be worth a few cents. But a coin that was preserved in near-perfect shape, showing its original red luster as if it had just left the mint yesterday, is another story entirely. Collectors call these grades mint state coins, and they can fetch impressive prices. Errors also play a role. The 1942 Wheat Penny is known for having some famous mistakes, like doubled dies where the lettering appears doubled, or off-center strikes where part of the design is missing. These quirky accidents, rare as they are, drive up demand dramatically. Imagine holding a coin that slipped past the mint's quality control during one of the most intense times in U.S. history. That's the kind of rarity that excites coin hunters. Another factor that gives the 1942 penny special appeal is its place in the broader Lincoln Cent series. Collectors love to build full sets, trying to gather every year and every mint mark. Since the Wheat Penny design ran from 1909 to 1958, that's nearly 50 years of coins. Within that set, certain dates and mint marks are rarer than others, but even common dates like 1942 become valuable when they're in top condition. For many collectors, filling the 1942 spot in their album with a high-grade, no mint mark example is a satisfying achievement. Think for a moment about how many 1942 pennies might still be hiding today. Some are tucked away in family coin jars, others lie forgotten in attics, and a few are kept safe in coin albums passed down through generations. You might even find one in your change, though it's becoming less likely as time goes on. Every year, more of these coins disappear into collections or simply wear out beyond recognition. That scarcity is what makes the surviving high-quality pieces so valuable. There's also a fascinating psychological aspect to why people chase coins like the 1942 penny. It's not just about money, it's about discovery. Imagine the thrill of pulling an old wheat penny from circulation, flipping it over, and realizing it's a 1942 with no mint mark. It's the treasure hunt aspect that keeps collectors motivated. Coins become stories, puzzles, and tiny pieces of American heritage all at once, and it's worth noting that the Lincoln Cent, especially the Wheat Penny era, has a huge fan base. From young collectors just starting out to seasoned numismatists with decades of experience, the community is vast and passionate. The 1942 penny, with its wartime connection and collectible variations, is often a centerpiece in conversations about affordable yet potentially valuable coins. Another thing that adds to the charm of the 1942 penny is its design itself. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln is timeless, capturing the strength and dignity of one of America's greatest leaders. The wheat stalks on the back symbolize prosperity and agriculture, a fitting tribute to the nation's roots. Together, they make a coin that's not only historically significant but artistically beautiful. As time passes, coins like the 1942 penny only grow more desirable. Supply shrinks while demand rises, especially as younger generations rediscover the fun of collecting. And since every coin is a tangible piece of history, their value isn't just financial, it's sentimental, too. Owning a 1942 penny is like holding a piece of 1940s America in your hand, a link to a world shaped by sacrifice, change, and resilience. Now, let's come to the most exciting part of this story, the value. While many 1942 no-mint mark wheat pennies might only be worth a few cents or a couple of dollars in average condition, the rarest and best preserved examples command serious money. If you're lucky enough to have a coin in top mint state condition, with blazing red surfaces and no visible marks, it could be worth far more than you'd expect. And here it is, the number you've been waiting for. A 1942 no-mint mark Lincoln Wheat Penny in superb condition has been known to sell for as much as $47,737. Welcome back to World Information HD, where we uncover the secrets and hidden treasures of rare coins that might just be sitting inside your pocket change, in your old drawers, or tucked away in forgotten jars of pennies. Today's deep dive is into one of the most fascinating coins from the mid-20th century, a coin that circulated heavily during and just after the Second World War. We're talking about the 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny without a mint mark. While at first glance it might seem like just another common wheat cent, the truth is far more exciting. These coins carry incredible history, remarkable design features, and in certain conditions, they can be worth a small fortune. Let's start by setting the stage. The year 1945 was monumental in American and world history. The United States had just emerged victorious in the Second World War, and the nation was transitioning from wartime production back to peacetime life. Industries that had been devoted to building tanks, ships, and aircraft were now shifting back to automobiles, household goods, and consumer products. Millions of soldiers were returning home, families were being reunited, and optimism filled the air. In the middle of this cultural and economic shift, coins like the Lincoln Wheat Penny were being struck and handed out daily in change. Now, the 1945 penny without a mint mark was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not use a mint mark at the time. If you look at one of these coins today, you'll notice the obverse features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner back in 1909. His face is turned to the right, and above his head you'll see the words, "In God We Trust." To the left of his portrait is the word, "Liberty," and to the right is the date, 1945. Importantly, if your coin does not have a small letter D or S under the date, that means it is from Philadelphia. The reverse of the coin is just as iconic. It bears the classic wheat ears design, which gives this series its nickname, the Wheat Penny. At the top you'll read, E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many, one. In the center is the denomination, 1 cent, along with United States of America. The two stylized wheat stalks flank the writing on either side, symbolizing prosperity, agriculture, and America's enduring strength. This design was beloved for decades until it was replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse in 1959. But what makes the 1945 no-mint mark Lincoln Wheat Penny so interesting isn't just its design, it's also its production numbers, condition, and survival rate. The Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of these pennies in 1945. Because of this, most people assume they are common and not worth much. However, the devil is in the details. Not every 1945 penny is equal. Factors like strike quality, condition, color, luster, and whether there are minting errors all play a massive role in determining value. Let's talk condition first, because this is the foundation of coin collecting. When these pennies were minted, they left the presses with bright, original luster and a copper-red color. Over time, circulation wears down the details. Lincoln's cheek and jaw are often the first to flatten, followed by the wheat stalks on the reverse. If you find a heavily circulated 1945 penny, it might only be worth face value, maybe a few cents to collectors. But if you find one in pristine condition, say, graded mint state 65 or higher, the value can increase dramatically. Collectors prize coins that retain their original mint luster and sharp detail. Color is another key factor. Lincoln Wheat Pennies are graded not only on wear but also on their color designation. They can be classified as brown, red-brown, or red. A full red coin, meaning it still shines with that original copper brilliance, is much rarer than a dull brown example. Collectors will pay a premium for red coins, especially from earlier years like 1945. Now let's dig into something even more fascinating: errors and varieties. Because these coins were struck in such high numbers during a time when the mint was under pressure to meet demand, mistakes happened. And those mistakes can turn an ordinary penny into something extraordinary. Some of the most notable errors in 1945 no-mint mark pennies include doubled dies, off-center strikes, die cracks, clipped planchets, and repunched mint marks. Yes, even though Philadelphia coins technically don't have mint marks, sometimes die varieties were created that collectors now look for. One popular variety involves doubled dies, where the design elements appear doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. If you come across a 1945 penny where the date, lettering, or even parts of Lincoln's profile look doubled, you may have something very special. Another fascinating error is the off-center strike. These coins were not struck perfectly on the planchet, leaving part of the design missing and creating a crescent-shaped blank area. Depending on how far off-center the strike is, these can be worth a surprising amount. Clipped planchets are another type of error to watch for. This happens when the blank piece of metal that becomes the coin is improperly cut, resulting in a curved or straight clip missing from the edge of the coin. These errors are easy to spot and are sought after by error coin collectors. Die cracks and cuts are also intriguing. Overused dies sometimes break, leaving raised lines or blobs of metal on the coin. These flaws, while unintentional, create uniqueness and drive up interest. The world of error collecting is full of surprises, and the 1945 wheat penny has its fair share of them. But let's not overlook the historical significance of these coins. Remember, in 1943 pennies were made of steel coated with zinc because copper was needed for the war effort. By 1945, the mint had returned to the traditional copper alloy, which was 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. Holding a 1945 penny is like holding a piece of that transition, a symbol of America's return to normal life after years of conflict. Another fascinating aspect is the sheer survival rate. While hundreds of millions were minted, many were lost, melted, or destroyed over the decades. Those that remain in high grade are much scarcer than you might think. Collectors today often seek out a complete Lincoln wheat cent collection, and no set would be complete without a nice example of the 1945 Philadelphia issue. So, how do you know if you have a valuable one? First, check the coin's date and mint mark. Make sure it says 1945 with no mint letter below it. Next, examine its condition. Does it still have sharp detail? Is Lincoln's hair crisp, or is it worn smooth? Do the wheat stalks on the back show individual lines, or are they flattened? If the coin has strong details and original luster, you may have something valuable. Next, check for errors. Use a magnifying glass to look for doubling, cracks, or off-center strikes. Even minor errors can make a coin worth more than face value. And finally, consider getting it graded by a professional coin grading service. A certified coin with a high grade can fetch far more money than a raw coin, because collectors trust the authenticity and condition assigned by reputable grading companies. The market for Lincoln wheat pennies is strong and continues to grow. Collectors love these coins for their history, their design, and their potential value. The 1945 no-mint mark penny might be common in lower grades, but in top condition or with the right error, it transforms into a true gem. And now comes the part you've been waiting for, the value. While circulated examples might only be worth a few cents to a few dollars, some pristine, rare, and unique examples have sold for incredible amounts at auction. One especially well-preserved 1945 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat penny has been valued at an astonishing $55,992. The year was 1946, a time when the United States was stepping into a new chapter after the end of the Second World War. Millions of men and women were returning home, factories were shifting production from wartime machinery to peacetime goods, and Americans were filled with hope for a brighter tomorrow. In the middle of all of this transition, the U.S. Mint quietly continued its mission of striking coins that would pass through the hands of everyday people. Among the many coins minted that year was one particular issue that today stands out to collectors, the 1946 Denver Mint Lincoln wheat penny. This small copper coin, weighing just over 3 grams, might look ordinary at first glance, but it carries with it layers of history, design artistry, and surprising value for those who know what to look for. The Lincoln wheat cent had already been in circulation for nearly 4 decades by the time 1946 rolled around. First introduced in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, the coin featured a bold portrait of the 16th president on the obverse, designed by Victor David Brenner. This was the first time in American history that the image of a real person, rather than a symbolic figure of liberty, appeared on the nation's circulating coins. Brenner's design struck a chord with the American public, and the wheat stalks on the reverse symbolized the country's agricultural strength and prosperity. The 1946 Lincoln cent continued that legacy. Struck at the Denver Mint, which bore the small D mint mark beneath the date, this penny was part of a massive mintage. Over 315 million examples were produced, meaning that at the time, these coins were far from rare. They jingled in the pockets of soldiers returning from war, they were handed over counters in diners, and they found their way into piggy banks belonging to children across the nation. But what makes the 1946 wheat penny fascinating is not just its history, but the many subtleties that make it collectible today. To begin with, condition plays an enormous role in the value of any coin. A well-worn 1946 one that's been passed from hand to hand for decades, may not command much more than face value in today's market. However, when you move into higher grades, coins that were preserved with little or no circulation, the story changes dramatically. Uncirculated examples, often described as mint state, can show off the full beauty of Brenner's design. Lincoln's hair and beard display intricate detail, the wheat ears on the reverse remain sharp, and the original red luster of the copper can shimmer under the light. Collectors often divide copper coins like this into categories based on their coloration. There are red, red-brown, and brown designations. A coin that has maintained its full fiery red color since the day it was struck is far scarcer than one that has toned into shades of brown over the decades. Red examples, particularly in high grades, are extremely sought after. Yet it isn't just condition that sets some 1946 pennies apart. There are also varieties and errors that add layers of intrigue. In the world of coin collecting, mistakes can sometimes be more valuable than perfection. The 1946 Lincoln cent is known to have several notable varieties. Some collectors search for doubled die obverse coins, where the lettering or date may appear doubled due to a striking mishap during the die creation process. These doubled features are visible even to the naked eye and make the coin a conversation piece. Another collectible variety involves repunched mint marks, often abbreviated as RPMs. Because the D mint mark was hand-punched into each working die, inconsistencies sometimes occurred. In certain 1946 pennies, you can spot a secondary D mint mark slightly offset from the primary one. These RPM varieties are catalogued and prized by specialists. Even beyond official varieties, there are striking errors that collectors treasure. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and die cracks are examples of mistakes that turn a normal penny into something special. To the average spender in 1946, these would have simply been oddities, but to today's collectors, they represent opportunities to own one-of-a-kind pieces. When considering the broader context, it's important to note that 1946 was the first full year after the wartime steel cents of 1943. During the war, copper had been a critical material for ammunition and equipment, so pennies were struck from zinc-coated steel for a single year. By 1944, the mint returned to using a bronze composition, consisting of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, which continued through 1946. For collectors, this means the 1946 wheat penny holds a certain charm as part of that return to normalcy. Grading, as mentioned earlier, is one of the most crucial aspects of determining value. A circulated coin in grades such as fine or very fine may only be worth a few cents or perhaps a small premium to someone completing a wheat cent collection. But higher grade examples graded by professional services such as PCGS or NGC can reach impressive sums. Coins graded in the mint state 65 red category or better become scarce, and when you climb even higher to mint state 67, the rarity increases exponentially. The reason is simple. While millions of these coins were minted, very few survived in pristine condition. Most entered circulation, rubbed against other coins, and developed marks, spots, or dull toning. Finding a coin that looks nearly as perfect today as it did when it left the Denver Mint almost 80 years ago is a true prize. For collectors and investors, the thrill lies in the hunt. Many search through old rolls of pennies, purchased from banks or inherited from family members, in hopes of uncovering a gem. Others scour coin shows and online auctions, always with the dream of adding that elusive top-grade 1940 60 penny to their collection. One fascinating aspect of the hobby is how small differences in grade can lead to enormous differences in value. A Mint State 65 red penny might fetch a respectable sum, but bumping that same coin to Mint State 67 red could increase the value by thousands of dollars. That razor-thin line between grades underscores the importance of careful preservation, professional grading, and a sharp eye for quality. Beyond the technical details, the 1940 60 penny also serves as a time capsule. Each coin is a tangible connection to the post-war era. Imagine the stories these pennies could tell if they could speak: the hands of veterans buying a cup of coffee, children dropping them into jukeboxes to play the latest hits, or young couples saving them for a down payment on their first homes. The Lincoln cent was more than just a coin. It was a part of everyday American life, a witness to countless small moments in history. Today, numismatics, the study and collection of coins, has grown into a worldwide passion. Collectors from all walks of life find joy in holding history in their hands. The 1940 60 wheat penny, though common in some respects, holds a special place in that story. Its abundance in circulated grades makes it accessible for beginners, while its rarity in top condition challenges advanced collectors. Its varieties and errors invite endless exploration, and its historical context gives it meaning far beyond its face value. So, what does all of this lead to? Why has this small copper coin continued to fascinate collectors decades after its minting? The answer lies not only in its design and rarity, but in the human connection it represents. Collecting coins is not just about monetary worth, it's about preserving stories, honoring history, and finding beauty in the smallest details. And yet, for those who do wish to know the financial side of the equation, the numbers can be astonishing. While most 1940 60 wheat pennies will never be worth more than a few dollars, the finest known examples, those carefully preserved in blazing red luster, free of spots and blemishes, and graded at the highest levels, have commanded jaw-dropping prices at auction. In fact, one of the finest examples of the 1940 60 Lincoln wheat penny has sold for an astounding $49,266.